Hello everyone! Today we're gonna review a very exciting controller. This here is the ZDO Plus, and it's a controller with a lot of features and a modular design. In the box, the first thing you'll see is the carrying case. And the manual is entirely in Chinese, but you can point your phone to the screen and translate it with the Google Translate app. You will also get a braided USB Type-C cable and a lot of Dpad options. And this one here is very interesting. It's shaped like an analog stick. The carrying case is very high quality. And inside we have the controller, and a lot of accessories. Look at the amount of stick options. On the top there's a pocket to store the cable or a power bank if you want. And since the controller doesn't come with sticks inserted, let's choose two here. The grips in the back are rubberized. And the controller is very comfortable ergonomically. There's a headphone jack on the bottom, and 4 holes here for the back paddles. There is also a trigger modifier. We have analog triggers, and if we flip the switch, we have a digital button. There's 2 shortcuts on the top, and I like those a lot. They're great shortcuts because they're out of the way but also within the reach of your finger. They're easy to press and they have a clicky mouse switch. The shutter buttons uses mouse switches too. The face buttons are mechanical with a good travel distance and won't sink flat with the shell. The stick shaft is made of metal and there's anti-friction rings. There's no internal restriction gate though. The start, select, and function buttons are mechanical and the home button is a membrane button. And we can already see the RGB lights of this controller. The D-pad is mechanical with mouse switches, and it seems very good too. The back paddles are made of metal, and they attach magnetically to the holes in the back of the controller. They're very similar to the paddles in the Xbox Elite controller. And here's how the controller looks with all 4 paddles inserted. The trigger switch is a bit close to your middle finger, but it's not easy to activate them. It's safe to say that you won't accidentally move it while playing. There's also 3 buttons here, one for pairing, one for gyro, and one for the RGB lights. There's charging pins for the dock, and apparently this back shell is removable. We'll check that out later. With the paddles inserted, this controller has 6 shortcuts, which is very cool. And with the paddles being removable, you can customize it however you want. The faceplate of the controller is also removable. Here you'll have access to the modules of the stick, D-pad and buttons. And if you look closely, there is a slot for the dongle inside the controller. And this is really great, because you can store the dongle inside the controller, you don't have to worry about losing it. And since the shell is transparent, you can always see if it's there or not. Speaking about the D-pads, there's a lot of options here. This one is the super concave option. There's this big hole in the center and it fits your thumb perfectly. There's the famous disc D-pad, and a lot of brands use this design. There's the cross D-pad, which is the most familiar of all, and it works pretty well too. There's just one detail, it is very hard to remove. But there's this tiny hole here, which you can use a tool like a screwdriver to remove it. And finally, there's the analog stick D-pad. With this D-pad, you'll have 3 analog sticks. And honestly, it feels pretty good. The mechanical switches makes it very clicky like an arcade stick. And I think that's really the idea behind here, because you can actually remove the stick and use any of the other options included in the case. The other options have a different shape, and there's 2 options with different heights, and the tall one is honestly the tallest stick that I've ever seen. Using it with a D-pad module makes the arcade experience almost identical to the original. With the only difference that the gate here is a round gate. On real arcade stick, at least the Japanese ones, the gate has a square shape. But the clickiness feels nearly the same. It's like a miniature version. If they add an additional 4-button module, you'll have the perfect arcade experience. But I had to try it for real, so I booted up Street Fighter 4 and tested some combos. It takes some time to get used to it, but this is actually pretty good and very precise. This super tall stick is also very useful for shooting games. The range of movement is much wider here, and because of this you'll have more precision with your aim. Now let's check those modules. To remove them, you'll have to take the included tool in the carrying case. Unscrew the modules and take off the plastic cover. On this side, the stick modules and button modules are separate. But because the shape is different, you cannot swap the buttons and the sticks around. And honestly, this was very disappointing. Because the whole idea of a controller is being able to customize the buttons however you want. And if you look here, the left side is also locked in place. The D-pad and analog sticks are the same piece. And if you look at the shell, there's these holes here that won't let you put the stick in the other way around. Turns out that if you want to have a different layout, you'll have to buy additional modules. This was such a crappy move from the company because the modules are already here. Why do I have to buy additional modules just to change the layout around? It was just very disappointing to find out about this while discovering the product, and this ruins the customer experience. But as a friend of mine says, it is what it is. With the front shell removed, you can also remove the back shell. And here you have easy access to the battery. You can also access the reset button from here. Speaking about the connection modes, this controller has 3 modes: the switch mode, the dongle mode, and the Bluetooth mode. Each mode can be accessed with different button combinations. The switch mode has a red light, the dongle mode has a blue light, and the Bluetooth mode has a green light. And each of the LEDs represent a different setting. Holding start and pressing a different direction on the D-pad lets you change profiles. And the second light lights up when you activate the gyro function. The third light is battery, and the last light is for the headphone jack, which only works with a wired connection. The light button can only turn on or off the LEDs. But you have a smartphone app which you can use to customize the RGB lights. The app is only in Chinese, but it's easy to understand. This is the profile option. And here you have the shortcut buttons. Here you can remap any button on the controller. And you can also remap it to keyboard keys and mouse buttons. The next option is for the stick settings. And the trigger dead zones. Here's the gyro settings. And the last one is for the RGB lights. Here you can change colors for each of the different modules. There's a lot of customization options. And you can turn on or off each section. Here's how it looks with the lights off. Testing on the switch, it can wake up the console. And it does have motion controls. The home button works as expected, and the function button is kinda blank. But it's necessary because you'll use it to remap the shortcut buttons. However, if you double tap the function button, it works as the capture button. This is a very clever idea because it lets you use the capture function without interfering when you want to remap a button or record a macro. The configuration of the buttons is also correct in the switch mode. And the rumble motor is a normal rumble. On PC, you can hold start and select to activate D input mode. Pressing the combination again brings the controller back to X input. There is no access to the switch mode using in the wired or with a dongle connection, but you can still access it with a Bluetooth connection. This way you can use the gyro sensors if you want. Testing the analog sticks, there are no dead zones. There's no cardinal snapping. And the circularity is not perfect, but it's not bad either. There's no outer dead zone too. The stick resolution is around 250 steps. And the D-pad is amazing. The diagonals are very easy to hit, and they are consistent in all four corners. And there's a physical center pivot preventing you from hitting all 4 directions. The same rule applies to all of the other D-pads, including the analog stick module. As you've seen before, this is great for fighting games. But triggers have little to no dead zone too. And flipping the switch, the digital button works as expected. Remapping buttons is super easy thanks to the button combination. You don't need a PC, although you can remap it through the app if you want. Unfortunately, you cannot remap button combos, but you can remap macros. There is also a turbo option, but you cannot change the turbo speed. Maybe you can change it on the app. And the simulated gyro works well too. Moving to the teardown, you'll have to remove the front shell and the back shell to access all of the screws. Since the modules are easy to remove, let's check them first. The button layout is fixed, and here we have a very thin rubber membrane. But the actual switches are mechanical. The stick module is very different, and I have never seen this module before. There's no brand too. But it is a Hall effect module. On the other side, we have the stick module and the D-pad module in the same piece. The stick module is the same, and the D-pad module uses the same mechanical switches for the face buttons. Removing the top part reveals the switches for the shortcut buttons. And here's a look at the back shell. Here we can see the magnets that attract the paddles. And the construction of the trigger modifier concerned me a bit, because the structure here feels very fragile. But this structure here will sit right on the top of the mechanical switch, and when you push it down, it won't break. Here's a look of how it works. On the back of the shell, we have these dumb switches for the function buttons, and the headphone jack right under it. The rumble motors are removable, and these are the switches for the back paddles. The triggers have wires going towards it, which means that these triggers have rumble motors on it, and it has a metal pivot as you can see here. We can also see the rumble motors inside. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing else to see in the front shell because the modules are removed. Looking at the latency tests, this controller have a good latency only with a wired connection. Moving to my final thoughts, this is an amazing controller. There is a ton of value included in one single product. And honestly, there's just one con, which is the modules that can't be moved around, requiring you to buy additional ones online. But overall, this controller performs great and has almost everything you'd want. It's definitely recommended, and it's a strong contender for the best controller of this year. And that's it for today's review. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.